Election Eve. What a remarkable week we have ahead of us. Dwayne, Adam, and I have been doing this since 2000, so we've done a lot of election weeks, including that most stressful week and month and 2 months in 2000, the year of the hanging Chad. So we'll get through it. My voice is a little bit challenged. But Friday was a very frustrating day, and I want to go back and I want to go forward. I want to tell you, though, nobody knows what's going to happen this week. It is so close. I have posted on my X account from the Financial Times, the best newspaper in the world, a list of the swing states and the margin of error. It is Nevada, a toss-up even. Wisconsin, Trump ahead by 0.4. Harris ahead by 0.4. In Pennsylvania, Trump ahead by 0.4. In Michigan, Harris ahead by 1.2, in North Carolina, Trump ahead by 1.5, in Georgia ahead by 1.8, and in Arizona, Trump ahead by 2.2. That would be a Trump victory. It could go the other way. I'll bring you the news. Now, Friday, as I said, was very eventful, as was the weekend. And the most important thing to keep in mind, and your prayer is focused on, that our troops remain under threat in the ocean of the Gulf and the Red Sea. Our American military is under bombardment constantly, and mostly Israel is coming under another attack from Iran soon, if we believe Ayatollah Khamenei. Wall Street Journal this morning, Iran tells region, strong and complex attack coming against Israel. Khamenei said, no way you can stop it. A crushing response, he said, to the attack by Israel on its in response for the last ballistic missile attack. The U.S. has told Iran it cannot stop Israel. It won't, quote, be able to restrain. Why would we want to restrain Israel if they get hit with a third ballistic missile attack by Iran or its proxies? And the war is underway. I mean, more than 900 Palestinian terrorists were killed in the last week in Jabalia. And I'm mispronouncing that, I'm sure. And some IDF soldiers fell. That war is now in its 11th, 14th, 13th month. And it's incredibly important we keep first things first. But it was a frustrating day for me on Friday. I was very angry. Now, let me start. I'm not an angry guy. I don't get angry very often. I've been in journalism for 35 years, on air and in print. In fact, I wrote my first column for Money in 1979 for the Los Angeles Herald Examiner, so more like 45 years. But a full-time gig in either broadcast or print since 1990. And I rarely, ever get angry. But I was mad on Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And it's not healthy. It's not good to get angry. It's not the way I was raised. Midwesterners don't normally get angry. Midwesterners stay very, very calm. Midwesterners generally are affable. They get over a loss. You got to if you're going to be a Browns fan. You got to if you're going to be a Penn State fan. You got to if you're going to be a Michigan fan. You got to get over losses. You just got to move on. And 12 years of Catholic education. This is the Octave of All Souls, which I'll talk about sometime today, and about All Saints Day on Friday, which was a great blessing to me. Best sermon I've heard in decades. I'll tell you about that later. I'm not a shouter. Catholic schools don't turn you into a shouter. In the years that I was at Harvard, things were very calm. My best friends are Democrats. Talked to them over the weekend. They called me up because they knew I was angry. But I'll tell you why I was really angry this weekend. Because Peanuts should be alive. And Jimmy the Raccoon should be alive. And Mr. Longo and his wife should not have had 12 agents of the New York Department of Environmental Conservation and the Chemung County Health Department in New York raid their home with a search warrant, put Mr. Longo under observation and restraint for 5 hours, take away the animals that he had rescued, 2 of them, and kill them. They euthanized them, allegedly because Peanut the squirrel had bitten one of the 12. There was no phone call. This was just government doing government, like Dr. Arnn talked about on Friday. Government has grown so massive. How do you get 12 people to go after a squirrel and a raccoon? Why don't you call up Mr. Longo and say, we've had some complaints about your squirrel. The squirrel's got 500,000 Instagram followers. Jimmy is a raccoon. I don't like raccoons. I'm in Maine a lot. I don't like raccoons, but this one is his pet, and it's not all that unusual. The stories tell me it's illegal to have a squirrel in New York. You should ask yourself, huh? It's illegal to have a squirrel? Can I have a dog that chases the squirrel? But really, 12 agents of the government, the state government in New York, that alone, this story alone, is enough to vote for every Republican on your ballot. Because we just got to stop this. They came on a Friday day. That's because it's a news cycle day that no one's going to notice anything. And I'm legitimately angry that more people don't realize that the problem isn't Longo or Peanuts or Jimmy. The problem is the Department of Environmental Conservation in New York and the health department of a county. There's no one injured. There were anonymous complaints, and they acted on a Friday, the day you drop bad news. Now, another thing happened on Friday that I just want to talk about briefly. I've been doing this for 30 years. All right, 1990, I started on the radio. I do not talk negatively about past colleagues, and I will not do that. On Friday, I quit the Washington Post, and some of you will know that. But I want to make sure you understand. Thank you to all of you who've texted me and posted me and sent me your kudos. Thank you, Elon Musk. Thank you, President Trump, everybody who's said something or anything else. I just want you to know, Ruth Marcus has nothing to do with this. Ruth Marcus is my friend. Ruth Marcus is a fabulous journalist. She has got legal chops the equal of anyone in the business. Ruth and I are the same age. Ruth and Fred Hyatt, the late Fred Hyatt, hired me at the Post 7 years ago. I've written 500 columns for the Post, and I will miss it. But Ruth has nothing to do with my quitting. Ruth was, I think, caught off guard by a report that was erroneous, with which I was familiar because of the Ruthless podcast. Chairman Michael Whatley had gone through the facts of the Bucks County thing. But I want you to know, I have nothing but love for Ruth and respect. Ruth has helped me out. I was abroad when my wife was ill once, and Ruth sprang into action. Ruth is a good person, and she's a fine journalist and a superb writer, and she has got nothing to do with this. You can be wrong and not be rotten. I hope my friends on the left think I am wrong but not rotten. I never lie intentionally. I may get things wrong, and I will correct the record. Everybody in our business in media gets things wrong, and they got to correct themselves. You can't get offended. You just have to say, I didn't know that. I will learn about it. And if I am bringing a different set of facts to the table, we'll compare and contrast. We'll decide who is right. That's how courts work. I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer with a lot of experience. I've been teaching con law for a long time. I teach my law students. You might get corrected by a judge. Don't argue with the judge. If you think the judge is wrong, you have a moment to appeal. You have a moment to persuade. Don't yell at a judge. And don't yell at your opponent. Don't get upset. Get facts. Get smart. Get prepared. I've had great editors at the Post. Michael Duffy, Michael Larrabee, David Vondrelli, Mark Laswell, many others. The new boss of the editorial page, David Shipley, is a wonderfully nice man. Ruth is the equal of any editor I have had all these years. And I want you to know the technical staff at First Look, the people who produce that show, superb professionals like Dwayne, like Adam, like Harley. I quit the Post for reasons unrelated to any of that. I want you to know, though, I will always tell you the truth. And when I make a statement of fact, I will tell you the statement of fact. And if there are two sides, there's no two sides to the Iranian-Israel story. There are no two sides to the fact that our troops are under attack. There are no two sides to my opinion that it would be a disaster for this country if Kamala Harris becomes president. And I want you to vote tomorrow. And there are many states, and I have them ready to tell you, where you can vote on the same day if you haven't voted yet, including my own Virginia, New Hampshire, which is close. You can vote in Michigan on the same day. You can vote in Wisconsin tomorrow. So even if you haven't voted, you can still go vote. You got to get out there, and you got to make sure this country has leadership that will defend our troops. I always vote based on commander-in-chief quality. That's just me. That because it comes down to who is in charge when 9/11 happens. And I thank God George W. Bush was, and not a very nice man, Al Gore, but he wasn't up to 9/11. W was. And I'm so glad Ronald Reagan was there when the Soviet Union wanted us to disarm, and the nuclear freeze movement was I'm so proud to have worked for Ronald Reagan. I'm here to tell you, presidents matter in moments when dictators threaten the world. It's why FDR mattered. It's why Truman mattered. It's why we've got to have Donald Trump back in the White House on this eve of World War III, which I hope doesn't happen, but Iran is threatening. You've got to vote tomorrow with the most important things in mind. President Trump is tested and ready. Vice President Harris is not tested, not ready, and should not be our commander-in-chief. Quincy Jones passed away last night, so we will play music that is Quincy Jones produced throughout today. I mentioned in the first segment, people make mistakes. What do you do when you make a mistake? You correct yourself. I made a mistake in the first segment today. I said the raccoon was named Jimmy. It was Fred. Okay, Fred and Jimmy are pretty much the same thing in my book, but it's still a mistake. And so there you have one of the great memes that have been going around if you're watching on the Salem News Channel. People make mistakes. Just correct yourself. Just if someone says to you in your ear, no, the raccoon is Fred, Hugh, then you say, oh, okay, the raccoon's Fred. I'm sorry. I thought it was Jimmy. I can't remember everything, but I know the story about Peanut, and I love the Peanut things. All right, let me do the market report brought to you by our friends at AmericanFederal.com, Nick Grovich, AmFed, Coin and Bullion. Gold is going crazy. Gold is at $2,751 an ounce because I really do think if you're not paying attention to what Iran is threatening, you're not paying attention. And this time, Israel was restrained by Joe Biden the first time, and Tony Blinken. President Biden's not really in charge of anything, and you know that, and I know that. Here's President Biden, by the way, in Pennsylvania yesterday, cut number 10.
But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
He's an old guy who's just kind of lost it. And so he's not the kind of guys you want to smack in the ass for people who kill Americans and shoot at Americans. I don't know that the sailors on these ships are RRD. I don't care. I don't care if the people in North Carolina who have been crushed by Helene are Republican or Democrat. I heard two great sermons yesterday, my priest and my pastor, and they were both talking about, R&D doesn't matter when people are dying, when people are hurting, and certainly when they're not in the uniform of the United States getting fired on. And the Israeli people are under existential threat and have been for 13 months, and the guy's getting ready to go. So I'm not surprised. Gold is at $2,751 an ounce. And more people are buying and some people are selling. And whether you're buying or selling gold, do it with Nick Grovich and his team, 1-800-271, 1-800-271. I'm so wrong. 800-221-7694. 800-221-7694. Markets had a good day on Friday because they're anticipating a Trump win. The Dow was up 0.69, the Nasdaq up 0.8, S&P a little bit less, up 0.41. But the 10-year Treasury is at 4.3 because the jobs report was so awful. The private sector lost 30,000 jobs in the last month, and it's not because of Helene and the storm in Florida. It's not. Because the economy is weakening and everyone knows it's weakening, and they're afraid that Kamala Harris could win. Oil is up, West Texas at 71, Brent crude at 74, the 10-year Treasury at 4.29, but gold is at 2,751. And if you want to diversify, do it with Nick. 800-221-7694. American Federal has been doing this for so long, you should let them do it again. Now let me play for you, if I can, my friend. Well, let's start with James Blair, who's the political director at Fox News, talking with Bill Hemmer yesterday about the polls. Cut number 4.
I want to read this from Nate Cohn. This is on the New York Times polling that I showed our viewers here. Across these final polls, white Democrats were 16% likelier to respond than white Republicans. That's a larger disparity than our earlier polls this year, and it's not much better than our final polls in 2020, even with the pandemic over. It raises the possibility that the polls could underestimate Mr. Trump yet again. We do a lot to account for this, but in the end, there are no guarantees. How do you read that?
I think it's covering. I think that they know where things stand. Look, in all of those polls, in all the battleground states, I heard Carl before this talking about the recalled vote, they've set the electorate to the left of 2020, which doesn't comport with
That's the key point. You can't set the electorate wrong. I really do think Trump's winning. Of Quincy Jones was a genius. And if you've never seen The Greatest Night in Rock, a documentary about the making of this song, you'll understand why. He could work with anyone. Just like Vic Mattis, who's the weekend editor of the Washington Free Beacon and the co-host of Getting Hammered podcast, which will be part of my stress-reducing, very long ramble today. Good morning, Vic. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. I'm hanging in there.
Oh, you've got a cold, too. Do I hear a cold?
No, it's just the morning. It's the morning. It's the morning voice. That's all. But I still have to clear things out.
I have laryngitis, and I have been taking anti-laryngitis meds all weekend because I got to talk this week, right? So, Vic, what's going to happen? What's going to happen, Vic? I'm trusting you. What do you think?
Yeah. I wish, just for the sake of clicks, I can tell you that I've got the answer here and that Trump is taking this running away. And unfortunately, I've got to be honest, which is I don't know. And I think most people, and you said this yourself, I mean, let's be honest here. We only know what we know, and what we know is not a lot right now. The biggest problem, of course, are how to gauge the polls and this whole non-response bias. We know a lot of the Trump supporters don't answer polls, and these pollsters are trying to figure out, how do we weigh that? Are we overweighing it? Are we underweighing it? You had the Ann Selzer poll that everybody wants to talk about now, and they want to say, oh, this is it. This is the change and the shift. And there's a worry from a lot of people on our side, on the right, that says, oh, this is going to depress the vote out there. But it also can cause overconfidence on the other side. I think the more important thing is the Trump campaign not put themselves in a Hillary Clinton 2016 mindset and continue to think of themselves as that underdog, and just, as the president, the former president would say, just keep fighting, down to the only poll that's going to count. And I hate to say it because we joke about this all the time on the show, but the only one that matters is tomorrow. So we'll see. But if you look at all the indicators, it would make sense that Trump would win. You think about registered voters, and you think about what people care about the most and who they think that would do a better job. We may look back at this, Hugh, and say, wow, that was really obvious, but who knows?
No, I'm 68, Vic, and you're much younger than me. So when I say this a little bit different, I've been doing presidential campaigns since 1976. This is the craziest year ever. Of course, we haven't had a former president run again, and we've never had an incumbent president drop out and his nominee selected not by a convention in smoky rooms, but by process of this is, I guess, who President Obama wanted, and Nancy Pelosi. It's so extraordinary. But I want to play for you, and I rarely do this on my chat with Vic, but I want his reaction to it. Our mutual friend Guy Benson was on Fox News yesterday, and this is a 2-minute clip, but we got plenty of time. And he just did 3 side-by-sides or 4 side-by-sides of Harris then and Harris now, which I want you to comment on when we're done. Let's play for Vic Mattis, cut number 6, our friend Guy Benson on Big Show on Sunday.
All right, so now to this. Kamala Harris's policy pivots, there's many of them, and they're hard to miss. The question is, are moderates and undecided voters buying any of it? For instance, watch her flip-flop on guns.
How mandatory is your gun buyback program?
It's mandatory.
Second Amendment?
We have to get these guns off the street.
Look, I'm in favor of the Second Amendment. I don't believe we should be taking anybody's guns away.
Except when she does. She also pulled this 180 on fracking.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States.
Here she is walking back her policy on EV mandates.
So will everyone have to drive electric cars?
Well, by my plan, by 2045, we will have basically zero-emission vehicles only.
I will never tell you what kind of car you have to drive.
No, she did. Oh, and then, of course, there's the border wall. She loathed it. Now I guess she's for it.
Folks have plenty enough problems that they need their president to focus on.
You know what?
Instead of a wall. That wall ain't going to stop them.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
Good ideas. I guess the wall is no longer an un-American vanity project, which is what she used to call it. It's kind of tough to tell where she stands generally on the border and security. Watch this.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross the border as criminal. Those who cross our borders unlawfully will be apprehended. We will pursue more severe criminal charges against repeat violators.
And we could have gone on. That was just a sampling of this.
All right, I want to stop there, Vic. First of all, Guy Benson's got an amazing delivery, doesn't he?
Yes, he's charming in every way. He's got a terrific voice. That's why I guess they pay him the big bucks, Hugh.
But it's just comedic timing is something you can't teach, and he's got it. It's a great bit of comedic timing. What about this underlying uncertainty? Because I don't know how big the electorate's going to be. We've banked about 75 million votes. There isn't. We could double that, I suppose. And they've got same day voting in Virginia, New Hampshire, Michigan, and Wisconsin, New Mexico, 5 states that are. Do you think we're going to have a big turnout tomorrow?
No, I mean, that's the big question because everyone's getting all excited, for example, about how many Republicans have already gone out to vote early. And it is truly remarkable. If you look back historically, Republicans tend to be an election day type of people and type of voters. And this time they're out there early. Does that correlate with the increase in registered Republicans? And in other words, are all those people would have just normally have voted on election day, or is this in addition to everyone else that is going to in fact vote on election day? We're only going to find out tomorrow, and I know that this is something the Democrats are worried about because the thing that gives that away is they seem to be emphasizing a lot their belief that one, they can win all these swing states, but two, they said it's going to really depend on a big turnout tomorrow. They've really never said that. That was a Republican line about waiting for election day. All their people vote early. So I think they're clearly nervous about it. But those messages and the contrasts that Guy Benson showed, it's extremely effective if they're able to show that, prime time, social media, and get that in front of people's faces. But don't count on the rest of the media, as you know, to remind people of those things.
Now, there's always been same-day registration in some states for at least 20 years. So let's look at Nevada, where the Republicans banked all these votes that they've never been ahead before. A lot of people think it's over in Nevada for the Republicans. They're going to win. Trump's going to win. But if you can register on the same day in Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Virginia, New Hampshire, those states could change, right? I mean, we got to be prepared for anything because same-day registration means someone might never have voted in their life, but if they're 18 and they got a driver's license, they walk in, they get to vote. And if someone tells you can't, file a provisional because same-day registration means, I don't like that law, but you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a big concern, and so the election integrity thing. I mean, everybody talks about it on one side, but I mean, it really does matter how these votes are going to be counted, and the amount of leeway each state is going to give for when they get it in undated ballots, for example. I mean, there's some crazy stuff out there. So, yeah, again. They can't think about it in terms of them being ahead, meaning the Trump campaign. They have to think about it that they're behind. It's the only way. So we'll just have to see. I mean, again, it's sort of maddening because if you look at everything that she's done, you'd like to think that the American voter doesn't have that short term of a memory. And again, even as Nikki Haley has pointed out in the Wall Street Journal, you might not like Trump. You might not agree with all the things he says. It drives you up a wall. That's totally fair. But at the end of the day, who's the better candidate? And of course, are you better off now than you were 4 years? That should be the argument they need to close on. So we'll see.
Well, now let's talk about me. I was furious Friday. I mean, absolutely livid because the New York Department of Environmental Concerns and the county in which Peanut and the raccoon lived, Fred, sent 12 agents to seize the animals. Then they euthanized them, and they never called. It is such an extraordinary story of what I used to deal with every day when I litigated against the government. Vic, what do you think about this?
Right. There are a lot of people on one side who are making jokes about it, saying, "Oh, wow, people really care about certain people really care about the death of one squirrel when millions of people are dying all around the world or whatever it is." And it's not about the one squirrel per se, although it's sad. You see the videos; he's adorable. It's about the idea that government is spending all this amount of time and energy to enter your home, to this government intrusion that this is what they're concerned with, and of course it's a violation of your own sort of privacy rights. And what are the grounds for them to enter your home? I mean, I remembered Kamala Harris's line from years ago where she said that be prepared. We might come into your house just to make sure your guns are safely secured. I mean, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. But again, there's a lot of problems in New York. We know this with crime, illegal immigrants, corruption, and this is what they're spending their time doing. That should be
That's the
worrisome
key.
to a
The
lot of
other
people.
key is they didn't even think that Mr. Longo and his wife's lives depended on they moved to start peanut rescue animal thing. Now, I'm not into animal rescue. I've never had a peanut, but they've just totally turned their lives upside down. He's not going to be able to rebuild that. And they didn't even call him. It's just the government is out of control.
Right, right. You see that, you see what goes on in, for example, the state of California and the amount of intrusion that happens there. And you have to ask yourself, do you want more of this or do you want less? And I hope a lot of people, when they see this thing, I mean, people make jokes about it, but people should viscerally want to just say, enough. I'm not doing this. And then they make that clear with their vote. The timing couldn't be worse for one side, I think. And again, this poor guy, his wife, they need help, and it's like, is anybody safe? I don't know. It
Last
was not
question,
easy.
Vic.
Yeah.
We got 1 minute. The Ayatollah has threatened to hit Israel again with ballistic missiles. Again. And we've sent B-52. Do you think the country is focused on the fact that we are literally on the cusp of something enormous happening?
No. Right now we're all focused on tomorrow, and as many people would say, trying to save our own quote unquote threat to democracy when there's a real threat to democracy out there in Khamenei and Iran. I'm also worried about the B-52s, which we've been using since 1952. I mean, this is a reminder that the U.S. military.
Those are the
needs to
young
be
ones.
revamped. Yeah,
Those are the young
right.
ones.
So I mean, Israel needs to do what it has to do.
Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon, co-host of Getting Hammered. I'm really going to need you and Mary Catherine to go long today and explain
Drink a lot of coffee.
Peanut and Fred for your audience and make me laugh, and of course celebrate Ohio State's win over the Nittany Lions, because that was the bright spot in a long weekend. Thank you, Vic Mattis. Yes, this is a Quincy Jones song, one that Selena Zito and I can recall. Good morning, Selena. The late, great Quincy Jones passed away last night, so we are going to honor him by playing music he produced today. Selena Zito, you find yourself at ground zero, as you have for the last 20 years. You're in Pennsylvania. It's going to be down to PA. You were feet from President Trump when he was shot in the head. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, as I wrote over the weekend, I'd rather be him than her going into tomorrow. Doesn't mean he's going to win, but I think that he has the momentum in my home state, and I think he has the electorate that will put him over the top. Again, that doesn't mean that he's going to win. I just would rather be him than her going into Pennsylvania tomorrow night. Basically, the same way I felt in 2016 and not how I felt in 2020. 2020 was a very different year. Donald Trump does very, very well when it comes to having to fight against something and when that thing fights back. COVID, he could not fight against. And it was just a very, very, very odd year. If tomorrow holds true in Pennsylvania and he does narrowly win the state, I think with the year that will be a fluke will be 2020 and not 2016, as a lot of experts have said.
Now, Selena, there are two stories that are looming. The Iranian supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei, has threatened a massive reprisal against Israel. There are some reports that the same sort of activity is underway that preceded their first two ballistic missile attacks. We've sent B-52s. We've told him we can't restrain Israel if this happens. And then we got Peanut and Fred. And oddly enough, for most Americans, Peanut and Fred means a lot more than the threat of World War III, because it's just not reported well. What do you think of both of those stories and whether or not they matter in the election to, people getting off the couch tomorrow and voting?
Well, the problem for Harris is that the American public has viewed, more than half of the country, including their own voters, has viewed their strength as not strength, but weak in the Middle East. And that began with Afghanistan, but it's also been people, that sentiment has continued throughout what we have seen since October 7th, 2023. And and as far as Peanut and Fred, the left is laughing at this. However, the government went into someone's home, took their pet, and killed them. And that is everyone's worst nightmare. Without authority, without I don't know all the the details of it, but it is the worst imaginable thing that Americans think about when they think about their government. And so that penetrates in the psyche. I mean, there's plenty of, I live out in, the middle of somewhere. There are plenty of people that have a squirrel or a deer that they feed every day. I watch them. I see the peanut droppings all over my backyard from my neighbors. It's not something that they would take very kindly to.
It's if people are missing this, they're missing the fact that they destroyed the lives of the Longos. They built their lives on, it's an accidental life. It wasn't a life they intended. But 12, I was watching the Ruthless Variety program on Friday, and I listened to the full program again on Saturday because I just had steam coming out of my ears because I've dealt with the government for so long. 12 people with a search warrant, they could have called, right? They could have called. We've had a couple of complaints about your raccoon, and people don't like raccoons. And what about this squirrel? They could have said, can we come over and sit down and see how it goes? It's just so crazy to me. Go ahead.
Absolutely crazy. They bullied, not only did they bully them, they took them and killed them. What? How does that even happen? And it doesn't even matter. Some people are, saying, well, these aren't Republicans that this happened to. That's not why people are upset. They're upset because this happened to Americans in the United States.
I want to focus on that. It's people want to be left alone by the government unless they want the government to deal with drug dealers. They want the government to deal with terrorists. They want the government to deal with crazy people. They want the government to help the homeless. They want the government to do things. This is 12 people. And thus far, there's not been one name. I want to carry you through the break if I can. Have you seen one name of the Department of Environmental Concern or whatever they call it in New York and the county, one person be named or go on the record?
I haven't. I could have missed it, but I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anyone put out a statement. Have they?
No, they made a couple of statements. They said the animals had to be euthanized. I don't know why the raccoon had to be euthanized. They said Peanut bit someone. I don't believe it. And until they show me the bite mark, I'm not going to. I think they decided, oh, we've made a mistake here. Let's bag the evidence and dump it. Selena, I know the facts of the Bucks County case, somewhat controversial for me to know them because I listened to the Ruthless Variety program and I heard Chairman Watley explain that Bucks County had gotten it wrong. Not sure it was malignant, but they'd gotten it wrong, sent people home. They got sued by the RNC successfully. And in a series of events that led to my quitting the Washington Post. Doesn't matter. But I knew Bucks County. I don't know about Lucerne County. What is the problem there?
Well, as I understand it, is that there were a lot of registrations that weren't processed or were processed late. I don't understand the full problem there. What I do know is that in 2020, the Trump campaign was putting out fires after they had started a long time earlier. They didn't have legal watching over everything. This time they've got legal in every county and they're on top of everything. So and I know that so far that the counties have been responsive, albeit dragging their feet because they're not used to people calling them on things. So I suspect that the Luzerne problem will be taken care of. Possibly part of the problem in Luzerne is, I don't know if you saw the report about the pack out of Arizona that
Oh,
was
yes, I did.
um,
Lots of suspicious registrations,
right,
many of
and that
which
may be
have
what the
caused
problem
eyebrows to
is.
arch. Okay.
Right, that
So
may
that
be what the
I'd say
problem is.
everyone's reporting on the polls instead on voting, and I just don't understand that. Now I want to ask you about the registration, the early voting in PA. First of all, my condolences to the Penn State fans. Not really. It was a wild game, and the Buckeyes were a better team, but they tried to make it into a Penn State victory. Poor James Franklin. I like him. He's a fine football coach, but the way that Michigan's gotten into Ryan Day's head, Ryan Day's gotten into James Franklin's head. Are lots of
Yeah.
downcast people walking around you in Pennsylvania this morning?
Well, I'm in Pittsburgh, and a lot of us are Pitt people. Not to say there's not a lot of Penn State people around, but that's what you see more of a downtrodden people out in the center of the state.
Okay, well, talk to me a little bit about Pittsburgh. You know, this election depends on the Yinzers. It's hard for me to believe it, but it does. How do the Yinzer? What's it feel like in Yinzerland? And tell people where Yinzerland is. It's not just Pittsburgh.
Right. It's about 13 counties that surround Pittsburgh. The majority of them are red. You were talking about Beaver County, Butler County, Washington, Cambria, Westmoreland. These are counties that were traditionally Democrat counties that have moved over to the Republican Party as the Democratic Party became more elitist and more far left, and the Republican Party is more welcoming to the middle class. There are voters within these 13 counties that will likely decide this election that stretch all the way from Erie, which is right next to Ashtabula, all the way down to Fayette County, which is right next to Wheeling and Washington County. And you know, those are counties that are supporting Trump. Within Pittsburgh, you have um, you have Allegheny County, which is blue. However, it's a little pink on the outer edges. Trump needs to bring those voters home, suburban voters, and bring them back home to the Republican Party to offset what happens in the city of Pittsburgh. Again, it does not mean that he will win Allegheny County, but in Pennsylvania, it is all about the margins. The margins for him in 2016 were 40,000. The margins for Biden in 2020 were 80,000. And it's all up to the middle class and suburban voters. Just not just in Allegheny County, but people have moved out of Allegheny County because it has higher taxes in Westmoreland, in Beaver, in Washington County.
So I want to close with this. It used to be as Ohio goes, so goes the nation. That's no longer
Yeah,
true. Ohio's red. It is now as
yeah.
Erie County goes, so goes the nation, which is an incredible thing for me to say. I went to summer camp in Erie. You know Erie. You're doing a story from Erie twice a year. How is Erie going to go?
Hard to say. It's right down the middle. I'm he neither of them have to win. She has to win Erie. Trump does not have to win Erie. He does have to run up the numbers in places like Cambria County, where Johnstown is, and Wilkes-Barre Township, where Luzerne County is, and in Bucks County. So it is not as important for him. But if he's winning Erie, though, he's winning the state,
Now,
no
I've been
doubt.
told, my last question, I've been told by a senior elected Republican, we won't know how Pennsylvania voted for 2 weeks. Do you agree or
Oh
disagree with
well,
that?
I disagree. I think we'll probably. I mean, it's always Philadelphia that comes in late. Maybe they will surprise us this year. But a lot of these counties have really. Yeah, Allegheny County, we will know definitely. Not that it's going to go for Trump, but it might give us some clues as to what's going. The mail-in ballots will dump at 8 p.m. You will know what the mail-ins are. If she is under 120, she's got a problem. That means she's got a problem in the rest of the state.
Would you unpack that under 120,000 Democratic advantage on
Mail-in.
mail-ins mean? Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. If she's at like 120, 130, she's probably got a problem in the state. She needs to be 150, 160, 170 in Allegheny County. in mail.
That's why we talked to Selena Zito. She knows not just Pennsylvania, but the heart of the country better than anybody. Selena Zito, thank you, my friend. Long week ahead. I look forward to talking to you after the smoke is cleared. Follow her on X at Zito Selena. Follow everything that she writes at selenazito.com. Thank you, Selena.
Thanks.
Jim Garrity is senior political writer for National Review, Washington Post contributing columnist, and a longtime friend of the program. And he's got a crystal ball, and he knows exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. Jim, what's going to happen tomorrow?
A lot of people are going to vote.
Oh, there you go. Do you read Harry Potter, Jim? You know that character, the professor, who's the professor of prophecy, who never says anything you can pin him down on?
Yeah, good. Wait, are you saying I'm a Harry Potter professor, Hugh? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I'm saying that you. But you're not Snape.
That's enough. I'm out of here.
You're Jim.
I'm just kidding.
Jim Garrity.
Hugh, I hope you're doing
Tell
well.
me.
I was really hoping you'd give me grief about the Jets, and I would use that as my excuse to storm out of here.
Well, I can't. I would otherwise, but the Browns lost, and even more importantly, Jazz Shaw died. I know two Jets fans, you and Jazz, and Jazz was a great man. And I've only got you to Jazz about the Jets now that Jazz has gone to Jets heaven, or maybe they win.
Yeah. Where I think when you get past the pearly gates, they just show the 1969 Super Bowl over and over again in a loop. Or they show, you know how when they create shirts after the championship games and after the Super Bowl, and they say, like Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl champions, and you're like, how did they get them printed up so fast? Well, they have them for both teams. And so they have, last year, San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl champs, 2024. And they give them away to Africa. So the Jets have been to the AFC championship game 4 times in my lifetime, and they've lost every time, which means there are New York Jets AFC champion T-shirts that have all been shipped off to starving countries where they desperately need anything. And I don't know about you, I would love to have those shirts. I would love to have shirts from the alternate reality where the Jets won that game and have played in 4 Super Bowls since 1969.
I have been told, Jim, that there are more Buffalo Bills fans in Africa than anywhere in the world because the Bills have lost 4 Super Bowls.
First of all, Hugh,
Jim,
we live in a similar neck of the woods. Do you notice how many Kansas City Chiefs fans there are that were not around a decade ago? Do you notice that?
It's disgusting. It's horrible. But I do know Ohio State beat Penn State, and I hope that doesn't depress the vote tomorrow because they're depressed. It was a great game. Let's get off football and get to this election. I went through the Financial Times this morning. Nevada, I trust the Financial Times on everything. Nevada even, Wisconsin, Harris +4, Pennsylvania, Trump +4, 0.4. Okay, 0.4 in Wisconsin, 0.4 in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Harris +1.2, North Carolina, Trump +1.5, Georgia Trump 1.8, Arizona, Trump 2.2. That's their assessment of all the polls that are out there averaged. What do you think's going to happen? I don't know that anyone has actually an informed take other than we don't know.
No, and the data keeps coming back in ways that are, if not contradictory, not as clear as you'd like it to be. For much of the year, I felt like Trump had a really good shot at the Sun Belt states. I felt less good about his chances in the blue wall, upper Midwest. But at various points, he's been ahead in these polls. I'll just kind of walk through it. Nevada, I think everybody's hitting refresh on John Ralston's site every day. One of 2 things are going to happen. Either Republicans are going to win Nevada, and we're going to say, wow, that early vote effort was just gangbusters. Last I checked, I don't know if he's put up another update, but it was like a 40,000 vote margin. Now, again, this is registered Republicans versus registered Democrats. We don't know how the independent or other voters cast their ballots, but you'd rather go in with 40,000 more than 40,000 less than the other party. And so I feel like either we're going to say, wow, okay, they work, or if the Democrats win, we're going to say the Harry Reid machine is just unstoppable. And it's like Lucy in the football. Feels like with Nevada, every year it's looking pretty good for Republicans. And then Lucy snatches the football. We did win the governor's race in 2022, but otherwise it's not.
I'm told by people that had it not snowed on Election Day in 2022 in the mountains of Nevada, Adam Laxalt would be Senator Laxalt because it was so close. And the turnout went down. And so it is a good thing to vote early in Nevada because the weather is a little bit precarious there. I don't know what the weather in Philadelphia is going to be tomorrow, but generally, do you have a feeling about that Iowa poll that came out? My feeling is she's a very reputable pollster. She's always been right, but I think polling is broken and maybe not possible to repair because if people won't talk to you, you can't poll them.
Yeah. If it were any other pollster in any other state, would be much easier to dismiss. But Ann Stelter has been doing this in Iowa for a very long time. She really only polls this state, right? And as far as I know, and she only works for the Des Moines
I
Register.
think you're right.
I
think you're right.
So, look, I think Trump's going to win Iowa. I really don't. I have not spent, more than a few minutes. The last time she polled, she had Trump only up by 4, which was considerable. And again, look, you look at, this is a state that has turned considerably redder during the Trump years. So I look at that, and my first thing is like, okay, that's probably wrong. But the other thing is that she does not adjust for like college education and income and all the different ways you want to. She just calls them up and puts the numbers in there. And so one theory is you get a lot of look. Old conservatives don't want to talk to you on the phone. Old liberals would love to talk to you on the phone for hours. They're thrilled when someone calls up and they, let me tell you how much I hate Trump, and let me tell you, they're perfectly happy to do it. So an argument is that you're getting more older left of center people in all your samples, and if you don't adjust for it, that's going to throw you off. It's an interesting theory. I don't know. I can't. We'll know with probably within 48 hours about how that shakes out. I don't mind actually. Hugh, I'm also starting to come around. Do you believe that the pollsters are starting to cluster together? That if they get an outlier,
The herding effect is. I listened to the commentary pod on Saturday during my long trundle, and they talked about clustering and herding. And yes, they are. I don't want to run low on time, Jim. I got to get to the 2 major stories: Peanut and Iran about to start World War III. Your choice. Right. Which one do you want to do first? That 12 agents had to go to a private home and destroy someone's life, or that Iran wants to destroy Israel and might try again tonight?
Yeah, I think the Peanut's the more important story. I'm joking, by the way. I do think the Middle East is the bigger one. But I do observe, first of all, de Blasio's not the mayor, but his spirit lives on
yes,
in New York City. When it comes to killing 4-legged animals, and for anyone who's, I imagine you have a very well-educated audience. They probably remember, oh yes, Bill de Blasio murdered a groundhog on Groundhog Day. Dropped it broke its
neck. But by accident. It was accidental. It wasn't euthanasia.
Hugh, that groundhog was about to testify about corruption in city contracts. And it was also died under very suspicious circumstances. So every Groundhog Day, I put out a picture of a smiling Bill de Blasio, and just kind of the idea that he's this, the Freddy Krueger of the Groundhog set. No, but I think this is this sort of, the people who are like, who's undecided at this time? There are a lot of people out there who don't pay any attention to politics. They don't pay any attention to the news. They don't read the newspapers. They don't watch the TV news. They certainly never watch the cable channels. And it's generally social media. Maybe it's TikTok. Maybe it's something with it's how they get their information. This is the kind of story that will break through because it's an animal story. I believe it was back in the old days of the New York Sun that they said they had an animal story on the front page every day because people love reading about animals. And, you always would have some sort of human interest story about this. Well, this is the ultimate human interest story. And this is a story that is very much this concept of big bloated government that can't do anything about the rats in New York City, that can't do anything about the actual problems in the city, but that somehow will figure out a way to deal with this issue that's become hey, I've got a pet squirrel on social media. That they come down on you like a ton of bricks.
12 agents, a search warrant. The county health department, which of course reminds us of all the county health departments during COVID, and the Department of Environmental Concerns or Controls or whatever they call it in New York, 12 people put this guy in his front step for 5 hours. They took his 2 pets. They ruined his life. I mean, I don't know if they've ruined it, but they've turned it upside down. He was running a rescue farm. Peanuts was his mascot, his fundraiser, and they killed the squirrel, and they didn't call. This is what gets me, Jim. That's the heart of this problem, is that we've got more than 50% of the GDP in this country goes to government. They haven't got anything to do, or they won't do that, which they must do. Instead, they go to this private individual's rescue farm and take his animals because of anonymous phone calls.
Yeah. Look, the kind of people who are attracted to government are unfortunately the kind of people who like having power over others. I think we've all encountered, I kind of wonderful people at TSA. I feel like it's gotten a lot better, but we've all seen the people who like take it out and say, well, this is a 4-ounce thing of toothpaste, and really you're supposed to use a 3-ounce thing of toothpaste. So, and they spend 5 minutes explaining it to you, and you know they know you get it, but you can't move on until they say it's okay for you to move on. We've all seen petty bureaucrats. We've all seen petty people who enjoy having that power over others.
Jim, I've been doing this a long time. Been in journalism since 1990. Actually wrote my first piece for pay in 1978. So I've been getting paid to opine since 1978. And I've never seen such an uncovered story. Wall Street Journal this morning, Iran tells region, quote, strong and complex attack coming on Israel. Times of Israel, U.S. said to warn Iran it won't be able to restrain Israel if Tehran attacks again. We send B-52s to the Gulf. Where is everybody? I mean, yeah, the journals covered it, but does anyone know could happen today?
I suspect what's going on is we've seen Iran shoot rockets at Israel twice in the past year. And in both cases, thankfully, casualties were minimal. Some damage here and there, but really not what you'd expect when you see hundreds of ballistic and non-ballistic missiles firing over in the direction of Israel. And I think there's kind of this perception that, okay, Iran, rattles the saber, sounds like they're going to do something really terrible, and then it turns out to be not bad, and that we in America can kind of, avert our eyes from it, or we don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about it. I also think that there's look, the U.S. media hasn't done a good job of covering foreign policy and national security issues for a long time. It always turns into a 24-hour story, if that, and then we revert back to domestic. People forget that the Russia-Ukraine war is still going on. When I was over there last time, a young woman described talking to a friend who she'd met years earlier in Brazil, and the guy says, "Hey, how did that war end?" And she's like, "It's still going on." Like people forget that various wars are going on. There are probably Americans who don't realize that the war that effectively started on October 7th is still going on in different forms, both in Gaza and regarding Lebanon and the Houthis and all that stuff. Apparently, the U.S. forces can't operate in the Red Sea anymore. We're not deploying troops there as often because the Houthis are firing so many missiles. We've effectively conceded the Red Sea, but however, we can't. So there's all of that, and the fact that we traditionally don't do well. But in the closing days before a presidential election, when this could reflect very badly on the incumbent party, reflect very badly on the current vice president of the United States, who keeps running around saying she's going to have the most lethal fighting force. Look, I'm glad she's saying it. But as numerous folks on the right have pointed out, she's never done anything in her career to indicate this is how she feels about foreign policy. There's nothing hawkish we've seen about her in the past. As I point out, the first 13 speeches Kamala Harris gave on the campaign trail, she didn't mention Russia or Ukraine at all. So I know she's going to tell me, oh, this is a really important issue to me. My suspicion is that most Democrats' support for Ukraine is about a mile wide and an inch deep. The moment it turns into a political liability, they will drop the issue and say to Ukraine, you're on your own. Look, I know that, because of 2016, they decided that Putin was bad. Now, keep in mind, Putin is bad not because Putin is evil and his human rights oppression and invasion of other countries and all that stuff. Putin is evil because he's associated with Trump. That's the real, what really bothers Democrats about Vladimir Putin. And
I want to close, Jim. We got 30 seconds. You're younger than I am. Which president do you wish could be reanimated to put into the office right now for at least a year?
Right here. Yep. Bedtime for Brezhnev. Right here. This is, or I'm pointing at the wrong guy. Reagan. Yeah. Look, there are other good ones. I liked George W. Bush. I liked George H.W. Bush, but too young to remember. Ford, but like Reagan. Piece of cake.
Well said. We'll leave it there. Jim Garrity. Follow him at Jim Garrity. Read him in the Post. And, of course, National Review, The Morning Jolt. Every morning you get Jim. You ought to. And get the 3 Martini podcast as well. Thank you, Jim. Have a good election day.
Same to you, Hugh.
Quincy Jones, such an amazing amount of talent in one individual. He will be missed. I have been able to bring you this program for 25 years because of sponsors. And I want to make sure that a couple of them I recognize right now. Americans for Prosperity, they're just out there fighting for free markets and free minds, and they need volunteers. They might need you tomorrow to help monitor or turn out the vote. AmericansForProsperity.org/volunteer. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. They empower students with educational freedom. They're in favor of lower taxes on Americans. They are in favor of a booming economy, and they pursue policies that lift all boats. More importantly, they pursue people getting involved in politics and people not being smart about politics. I love them. I love them. And if you want to be a part of an ongoing effort, not just one campaign, but you want to be deeply embedded in a great organization that has deep roots wherever they operate, head over to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer and get involved today. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. I also am sponsored by and have long regarded and deeply appreciate the work of the Heritage Foundation. For years before I moved back to Washington, D.C. in the Beltway, I broadcast when I came to town from the Heritage Foundation offices because they maintain a studio for talk show hosts who come to town because that's one of the services they provide the conservative movement. And under the leadership of Kevin Roberts, they have done such fine things. Kevin's being honored next week. And I wish I could be there to join him in doing that. One of the things they did this year has been much maligned and much simply misreported, bad reporting. Project 2025 is something the Heritage Foundation has done in one iteration or another since Ronald Reagan became president in 1980 and Edwin Fulner presented him with Mandate for Leadership, a compendium of ideas on what he might do and whom he might do it with that the then President Reagan used and studied and read and relied on. Now, Project 2025 came out early this year, and conservative thought is it's a wide spectrum from libertarian to center right. And I'm kind of on the center right part. I'm not a libertarian. I'm a national security conservative. And so there's some things I agree with and some things I don't disagree with in Project 2025. But if you want the truth about it, it's not Donald Trump's document. And so if you want to find out what the media has been saying, what truth is about Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation, head over to 25truth.com. 25truth.com. You deserve to know the truth about Project 2025, which has become sort of a punching bag for Democrats who need talking points. And it's kind of crazy because it's a think tank product full of great ideas, some of which I disagree with, some of which I agree with, but all of them provocative and interesting. 25truth.com. Now, I really want to tell you about my friend Rhett Rasmussen, who sent me an encouraging word over the weekend. Been a very long weekend. I've been somewhat sick and also in the middle of a controversy. And Rhett Rasmussen, what a great guy, really. United States Naval Academy, class of 1982. He runs besthotgrill.com. The best grills made in America. They're here with me in the Beltway. They're with me in California. The Solar Infrared Grill is the best grill made in America. Made in America. And fabulous if you like to grill. Just fabulous. Or if you just want a hibachi. They come in all sizes, all shapes, and you can buy before you try. You can also get new gas logs for your fireplace, new gas balls for your fireplace. Amazing American-made products in the same place. It's a family-owned business. Rhett did his service, did a wonderful job in the United States Navy, loves his Navy, loves it, loves it, loves it. I went to a Army-Navy game with him once. Maybe it was the Navy birthday. I can't remember. But Rhett loves, loves, loves the Navy. Irene does too. More importantly, he loves his customers. He takes care of you. So go to besthotgrill.com, besthotgrill.com. Wonderful, wonderful sponsor and great Christmas present. If you have clients, give them the small hibachi. They'll forever love you. besthotgrill.com. All Quincy Jones produced music today. I'm joined by Bernie Marino from Ohio. The Browns may have lost yesterday, but I think Bernie is going to win tomorrow. Good morning, Bernie. How do you feel?
I feel insanely, nervously optimistic, Hugh. I think we're going to win this thing. Look, people are sick and tired of Sherrod Brown. He's been around longer than dirt, 50 years in elected office, total failure, doesn't represent Ohio. It's time for a change, and on that change, we need outsiders in D.C. to get things done.
Now, Bernie, talk to me about the early vote in Ohio. I have not followed my home state as closely as I have, for example, Nevada and Pennsylvania, because I know it will go for former President Trump, but are you confident about the early vote that got turned in early?
Well, listen to these stats, Hugh, and you're going to be very proud of your home state. Republicans have a 250,000 early vote lead from Democrats. Never happened in the history of Ohio. That's what makes me
Wow.
very optimistic. It shows you the energy in the Republican Party. We're sick of being treated like garbage. We want leaders that put America first, and they're showing up in droves.
Now, Bernie, where do you spend today and tomorrow? I know you are a closed through the ticker. You run through the tape. Where are you doing it?
So we start here in Franklin County. We're going to go down to Hawking County. We're then going to go over to Muskingum, up to Tuscarawas County, and then end up in Cuyahoga for our final huge event. I got Coach Tuberville with me all day. So imagine I got the greatest coach in America helping me coach through the last 36 hours.
You also have got an Ohio State win at your back, so the people of Ohio are feeling pretty good. I got a call from an elected Democrat, a Republican, during the Ohio State-Penn State game, asked me how I was doing because there's some controversy I'm involved in. I said, I'm terrible. Penn State's up 10-0, but the Buckeyes won. And so people are feeling pretty good in Ohio today, aren't they?
Absolutely. And you think about this, in less than 36 hours, polls close here in Ohio, and Ohio will determine which party controls the United States Senate. With my election, I get to announce on national TV that Chuck Schumer is fired. Imagine having the honor to be able to do that.
Yeah, you're going to be able to do that before Tim Sheehy comes in. I don't think Dave McCormick will win until later than that. So, yes, we will know the Senate flips if Bernie can be called early. What time do you expect? Ohio's pretty good on turning in the vote early and clean, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, we submit all of our early and absentee votes by before 8 o'clock Eastern. So if this trend continues where Republicans are just dominating, I think we can get the race called early. But more important, Hugh, look, we have to send a message to the world. You know, you care a lot about foreign policy, of course, in addition to caring about Ohio and America. But the world needs to see a landslide victory tomorrow. They need to see that we reject the extremism of Kamala Harris and Sherrod Brown and Tim Walz. And they want an America that's on the ascent and that is true to its founding principles. That's what tomorrow ultimately is about.
Now, Bernie, I want to close by talking about a very important. I've been talking about peanut all morning, but I also want to talk about the fact that Iran has threatened our Israeli allies again, and we've sent B-52s, we've sent more ships. Our deterrence is gone in America. The Jewish community in Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati is large. You have engaged with them. They know you're a friend of Israel. Do you expect that will matter much tomorrow?
I think it will, because I think what they see is we had peace and stability around the world. By the way, my wife Bridget, that's her number one issue. She wants to make certain that we have a world that's at peace. That happens with American strength, as you know. With Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, with Sherrod Brown's full support, we've had war because of weakness. Israel's under attack. Ukraine was under attack. China is threatening Taiwan. Our southern border is being invaded. Look, we need American strength, and that happens by electing people from the Republican Party to go lead this country. Tomorrow is the most consequential day in American history. Let's go out there and vote. There's no voting today in Ohio. The polls are closed today. They open at 6:30 a.m. tomorrow. We have 13 hours of voting. Go out there, and if you've already voted, make your vote count by having others that you know and bring them to the polling booth. Babysit friends' kids while the parents are going out and voting. Do whatever you can to make certain that this election is an absolute landslide. I think if we reject Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in enough margin, Hugh, that the Democrat Party will find it has to reform itself. It has gotten too extreme, too far to the left, and we need to bring them back. We need two healthy parties in America, not one extremist party, because this country is not meant to be governed from the extremes.
And in Ohio, Sherrod Brown is just too liberal for Ohio. He has been for a long time, but Bernie Moreno, you brought the juice. I appreciate the campaign that you've run, and I think we'll win tomorrow. Bernie, congratulations for a great effort, but I know you're going to run through the tape, and I thank you for talking to me. Get out and vote Buckeyes. I'm on all across the Buckeye State, so Bernie, go out there and keep working. Thank you for joining me early.
You got it. Thank you, Hugh.
Generalissimo, what is your election schedule when it comes to Dwayne's World?
So later this afternoon, I'm going to tape a kind of a two-parter Dwayne's World. The first half will be with our friend John Ondrasik of Five for Fighting. He's got a great new yellow ribbon campaign. He's encouraging people to tie yellow ribbons around things on their property to kind of remember the hostages that we have in the Gaza Strip still. And say their name, that whole campaign. So we'll do a lot about that. And that will drop on Tuesday while the election's going on and while we're all sitting around waiting for the returns to start coming in. And then I'll have some other closing data from where the polling sits and kind of my final predictions. And then before we go on the air an hour early on Wednesday morning, I'm going to try to jam in what we know and do kind of an emergency Dwayne's World that I taped late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, and that will drop sometime Wednesday morning as well.
Well, Dwayne's World is a fabulous podcast. Add it to your podcast list. We will be on the air early, 5 a.m. on Wednesday.
Right.
Because I'm going to help Salem News Channel and Salem Radio Network in the 6 o'clock hour. But because Dwayne and I and Adam and Harley are going to be in the studio very early trying to figure out what has happened. And I really don't expect to know until very late at best on Tuesday night, probably at best early Wednesday morning. I got to go to bed early or I will just not be able to do a good show.
I'm going to sleep earlier in the day, and I'm basically pulling an all-nighter. I mean,
so
we have
before I forget, I want to talk about myphdweightloss.com, one of our great sponsors that Dwayne lost 50 pounds using. He's kept it off for more than 2 years. You call 864-644-1900. That's
864-644-1900.
And the reason I bring that up is there's a bowl of Halloween candy in my kitchen. And the Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I are always prepared, and people don't come. Kids don't come here.
Right.
And it's because it's just not a neighborhood with kids. It's far away, and people can't get there. So I have this Halloween candy. What does myphdweightloss.com tell people about leftover Halloween candy?
Throw it away, burn it, flush it, get rid of it. Don't eat it.
Don't leave it there thinking someone will eat this besides yourself.
It's too big of a temptation. Run away. Yes, run away. Absolutely.
How did you have a trick-or-treat night? How was your trick-or-treat night?
It was pretty light, a lot lighter than we expected it to be. So naturally, we had a ton of candy on hand. Fortunately, we've got 2 college-age kids, so
that's good.
That's taking care of the problem day by day.
And they can do that. They've got the metabolism.
They've got the metabolism to be able to burn it off.
So myphdweightloss.com. I told people this when I was out on the road with Gallagher. Gallagher, like you, lost 50 pounds, and he looks great like you. And so many people came through the line. It was like my Relief Factor people who come through the line with their Relief Factor, telling me how much they love Relief Factor. Everyone stopped and told Gallagher. Does anyone stop and tell you when they see you out and about?
I do get comments all the time. Our friend Carl, the Steelers fan, I talked to him over the weekend, and he was talking about it. So yeah, it still comes up in conversation.
Okay, I want a quick data dump from Dwayne. Dwayne does something I don't do. He tries to unscrew polls, and he tries to follow this. I'm just in the land of nobody knows.
Yep.
And it's easier to live in the land of nobody knows, right? What do you think?
Well, again, as Selena said, you'd sure rather be Trump. And again, if you look at how the early voting has done by party ID, right? Republicans in Iowa, for instance, Kim Reynolds releases data. There is 130,000 new registered Republicans than there were 4 years ago. For the Seltzer poll to be accurate, you've got to come to the conclusion that a bunch of people went out of their way to register as Republicans and then kind of sat in the background until it's election day and then decided, I'm going to cross over and vote for Kamala Harris. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And it's not just red states where there's Republican surge in both registrations and early vote. Florida, Texas, there's all sorts of Ohio, like we just heard from Bernie Moreno. There's all sorts of data of Republican surge in early voting. In swing states, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, all of that is happening as well. It's even happening in blue states. If you look at Oregon, I'm not saying we're going to win Oregon, but if you look at Oregon compared to 4 years ago, Republican early vote turnout is 7, 8, 9% above where it was. Simultaneously, Democrat turnout is off 7, 8, 9%. It's a phenomena that's sweeping the country. Now,
yeah, I got to tell you, I got a note from our friend Charlie Kirk this morning.
Yep.
Could I join him at 1? Eastern. I said, I'll try to, Charlie. My voice is not great. I'm supposed to do Kudlow today at 4, and you can hear my voice is just starting to get back after my perennial laryngitis. And I'll do a little bit, but I haven't got anything to say because I don't know enough to say it. And so I am
check
reluctant to do that.
Check out my hot air column this morning when it dropped.
I will. I do want to play, however, cut number 1 while you're with me because I want you to hear this. Cut number 1.
Okay.
The media has to have credibility, and the media doesn't have. It doesn't have any credibility.
No doubt.
Your show has a lot of credibility, by the way.
Hugh Hewitt has credibility, so I want you to remember that.
But that's not what he said.
He said Hugh Hewitt has credibility.
No, that's not
Let's
what
play it again, America. Cut number 1.
The media has to have credibility, and the media doesn't have. It doesn't have any credibility.
No doubt.
Your show has a lot of credibility.
Your show has a lot
Hugh
of...
Hewitt. So many people sent me this.
They're
over the
wrong.
weekend, Dwayne.
They're wrong. They're wrong.
They're just.
Who does the transcript?
refuse.
Who does the transcripts around here?
I have to go in and correct them every time. I just want you to. Hugh Hewitt has some credibility on the media. Thank you, Dwayne.
Whatever.
Whatever is right. You go away. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, I'm going to be talking next. Election Eve is long, but Bethany Mandel is going to be here to talk about Plutarch. Yes, you heard me right, because Election Eve demands Plutarch. And I'll tell you why when Bethany Mandel joins me next here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Bethany Mandel is my guest. I don't know if she's a Quincy Jones fan. Quincy Jones dying last night at the age of 91. I don't think you are, Bethany. Are you a Quincy Jones aficionado?
I don't even know who that is. Am I supposed to?
Okay, that's what I suspected. I want to talk to you about Plutarch. You made my morning. You were. I love Plutarch. I've done a long series on it for the Hillsdale Dialogues with Larry Arnn. We might go back. What were they doing? Your homeschooled children were learning Plutarch. Who was teaching them, and what were they learning?
So Seth literally just walked out of the room because he was providing me technical support, but that's literally the only thing that he does in our homeschool is teach Plutarch. He reads through every one life. I don't know, every 2 months or so, and he just reads through with my 11-year-old daughter, and they discuss it. He creates like study packets. He should sell these. Honestly, they're amazing.
Oh, he should, and I want to tell you why. Alexander Hamilton got through Valley Forge by studying Plutarch and copying out long passages when he was freezing. He just studied Plutarch. And there is not a children's guide to Plutarch. There isn't like one of those Charles and Mary Lamb Shakespeare for children. There should be a Plutarch for children. Seth has a calling. When did he become a Plutarch guy?
So I foisted it upon him. So we follow the homeschool philosophy of Charlotte Mason, and Charlotte Mason insisted upon children learning Plutarch starting in 5th grade. And I didn't know what Plutarch was before I started homeschooling. That's one of the things I love about homeschooling is that I've learned so much. But I started looking into like, what is Plutarch? What is this? And I realized that all of the founding fathers learned everything, civics, down from copywork, everything from Plutarch. And it's an incredible learning opportunity from so many different disciplines.
That's our Plutarch shout out. Now to the news. Israel is under threat again this morning. Khamenei has said they are going to face a massive response. We've sent B-52s. We have lost deterrence. They don't care what we do. Are you on edge, Bethany Mandel, about your friends in Israel?
I don't want to say bellicose, but I'm not. Every single attack has been shot down by every country from Jordan to the United States to Israel. I think that Israel really impacted the capability of the Iranians, and I mean they're moving. It seems like they're moving a lot of the launchers to Iraq so that they have closer proximity. But I don't even think that will be of impact. I think that the capabilities of Hezbollah and Iran were overestimated, and by striking them, Israel is sort of showing them who's boss.
Well, they are, but what would you expect Netanyahu and his government to do if another ballistic missile attack, and if they're Iranian missiles, I don't care where they come from. Could be Houthis, Iraqi militias, I don't care. It's all Iran. What do you do if you're Netanyahu and it happens a third time? 3 strikes and you're out, in my view.
Yeah, I mean it's just going to keep on going. I think there's going to be further strikes. The strike that Israel did about a week and a half ago in Tehran was really limited, and I think that restraint will not be, copied again if Iran decides to keep this going.
I think you're right. Let's conclude with two things, Peanut and the election. I'm furious about Peanut. I just am. 12 agents going into a private person's home, turning their life upside down as though there are no problems in New York for them to deal with. Did you have a reaction to this story other than, oh, it's a funny internet meme?
I'm so angry, and it's representative of everything that's wrong with government. The fact that New York spent 5 hours with agents in this man's home doing this, well, there's nothing else going on in New York. I think it was 3 days prior to that, a Jew was slashed in the face by someone walking to synagogue. Like that has never gotten the attention of New York authorities, and yet a squirrel, a pet squirrel, that deserves 5 hours of agents' time. This is exactly what so many people are warning about when they say, government is not your friend. The government should not be big enough to be able to do a raid like this, because it is ultimately not a nice group of folks.
And no one on the record, not one person has stepped up and said, my name is Joe. Let me tell you what happened. Here's the judge we got the warrant from. No accountability. Last question. How do you feel about tomorrow?
I'm feeling cautiously optimistic. I think I've been, looking at the polls in the same way that all of us have been looking at the polls. I think Michigan is a real toss-up, Pennsylvania is a real toss-up, and perhaps even New Hampshire is a real toss-up. And if he wins New Hampshire, then he doesn't have to win Michigan or Pennsylvania. Um, but it's going to come down to those shy Trump voters, and I think that there's a lot of them. Among my friend group, there's a lot of women who didn't vote for him the first two times who are being pushed to do so this time, in part because of stories like Peanut. And it sounds so silly, but I mean, this is exactly sort of the trajectory that our country is on, and we want off. We want off the train.
Yeah, there are two stories I've talked to you about. One is about international war and the survival of the state of Israel against fanatical theological enemies that are non-deterred. And the other is about a guy with a squirrel. And they're the same story. The United States is an impotent giant right now.
100%.
And it's got to change.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just got to change. Bethany Mandel, always a pleasure. Follow her on X at Bethany Shondark. Read everything she writes and do study Plutarch. Thank you for our Plutarch update. Coming up, Speaker Kevin McCarthy joins me. Nobody in America knows more about politics than Kevin McCarthy. So glad the former speaker could join me on election eve. Hugh Hewitt on election eve, and I am so honored that former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, would take time to talk to me on election eve. Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Welcome back. It is great to see you. How do you feel about tomorrow?
I feel good, a little nervous, ready for the election to be over. This is one of the closest elections, but even though the polling is in the margin of error, that doesn't mean one side can't win in a larger margin than you think. And look, I think it all comes down to Pennsylvania. I think we win the Senate. I think the House is going to be determined how well President Trump does, because these members are underperforming Trump. We've got a better chance to win in the House this cycle than we did the other two, and we won those. But Democrats have raised a lot more money than we did. And so it's going to be an interesting election night, but I think it could play very well for Republicans, or it could be a struggle.
Now, Mr. Speaker, you built this amazing organization. And as you noted, you won majorities for the Republicans in 2022, and you won a lot of seats that people didn't see coming in 2020. And you won. I mean, you're just very good. You built this amazing machine. What I would like to know from you is, first, let's start out in our shared territory of Central California. Ken Calvert, okay. How about our friends in Orange County? What about Mike Garcia? What about Dave Valadao? What about them?
All right, this is great, because you're right. In those last two election cycles, how did we win the majority by 5 seats? Well, we took them in California. When Nancy Pelosi became Speaker and I became leader, we took 6 seats from Nancy Pelosi just out of California. She lost the majority there. We've always gained seats in California. I really look to the Scott Ball race as the seat Republicans can gain. In presidential years, it's a disadvantage for Republicans because here in California and people don't play there, and it's a blue state. I think Ken Calvert's going to be fine. The seats I watch are John Duarte up north. We won that last cycle. And Mike Garcia. Mike Garcia is just this phenomenal member, and I call a statesman. His district is less than 30% Republican. It's LA County. a former Naval Academy F-18 pilot. The guy sits on appropriations. I put him on Intel. He's one of the smartest members you want um, in Congress. And he just does a phenomenal job, not a partisan job, but a phenomenal job. The problem is, does the wave overtake, meaning his district being such a Democrat district, a presidential year? But he has defied the odds every time before. I will tell you, the poll I just saw a couple days ago, he was up. It all determines on low propensity voters who turns out to vote.
Well, we want people to vote in California. So often Republicans think it doesn't matter. Donald Trump could actually win the popular vote if Republicans in California show up. Let me ask you, Mr. Speaker, about some of the couple of guys you recruited. Derek Van Orden in Wisconsin, Juan Ciscomani in Tucson. These are two of my favorite members of Congress. You brought him into the fray. You persuaded him to leave comfortable lives. They're very different people. Derek Van Orden, a SEAL up in Wisconsin. Juan Ciscomani, born in Mexico, naturalized in Tucson. Father is sick. How do those two look to you? I know you must be particularly interested in the people that you brought into politics.
Very much so. And I continue to help financially. I think I did like 20 million last month looking at a lot of different races. Juan Ciscomani, here's Arizona where Republicans lost the Senate. They lost all the statewide races. Juan picked up a Democrat seat. I think he is the future for the Republican Party in Arizona. You're right. He immigrated here at age 11. His father drove the bus in Tucson. He just loves this country. Tight race, but I think Juan's going to be all right. Democrats have poured everything into Juan and Derek Van Orden. This is Wisconsin. Another seat, Ron Kind, that the Democrats held for decades, never thought they could win. Derek Van Orden came in, did a fabulous job. Navy SEAL, they're coming after him. I feel good about where he is too. The races I looked, this is where you want to look at the beginning of the night to know how it's going to go across the country. In North Carolina, they redistrict. We should pick up 3, but you want to look at North Carolina 1. We're trying to beat a Democrat Davis. If we win that seat, if you look at Maine, Golden, the Democrat incumbent against Austin. If you look at Virginia, Spanberger's old seat, Derek Anderson, also a military veteran. If you look at those 3 races, North Carolina run, Virginia, and Maine, if Republicans win those 3, it's going to be a good night. Then look at Pennsylvania. Look at Wild's seat and also Cartwright, the 2 Democrats. If Bresnahan picks that one up, we win those 2. We could pick up seats this cycle, which I think we should do. In a normal year, we would if we had the right resources. It could be a really good night.
Now, Mr. Speaker, it's funny we come into this election weekend with 2 big stories. Iran is threatening Israel again. You've always been very closely allied with the Republican Jewish Coalition, Norm Coleman, and a bunch of our friends over there. How do you feel about the American Jewish vote, other supporters of Israel like me and you who are not Jewish, who support Israel, and they're being threatened on Election Day by Iran for a 3rd time?
I'll tell you, I have seen and met strong, liberal, Jewish Americans who say they are voting for Trump. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to vote, maybe I'll vote for Trump. They are 100% there because they see the future of Israel, the survival of Israel, fundamental in this race, because they've watched this Biden-Harris administration flip on the support of Israel, deny them what they need to actually carry out to protect themselves and security. Now, I just came back from Dubai a couple weeks ago, giving a speech, talking to other leaders in the Middle East. They want President Trump to win. And I'm talking both sides of the aisle in the Middle East, because they believe stability will happen in the Middle East. It will be a calmer place. There'll be less war. And I think they're fundamentally right.
You know, we're on right now in Detroit, big audience in Detroit. And it's a very Arab American audience and demographic, far more than other markets across the United States. But I asked the former president, maybe 2 times back, he was on the program, why are you getting 41% of the Arab American vote? Kamala Harris getting 41%, because they want peace. Have you seen that in your numbers as well, that it's not just Jewish Americans, it's Arab Americans?
It is. And this is the part of being a statesman to be president. How do you bring both sides together? Remember, President Trump brought Abraham Accords. They brought some peace into the Middle East, and that's respect on Arabs and Israel as well. That's a unique place to be, the respect for one another and the ability to get along with one another. That's what Trump brings the chaos down, can look for a future that has peace in it and prosperity for all sides. That's why people are going both. And when you look to Michigan, 100,000 votes can determine the outcome of Michigan. And it's unique that the president can walk in, get the support of Jewish members who have never supported him before, and get Arabs to endorse him at the same time, which you watch the mayor and others. I think Michigan is a critical place, not just for the presidential, but the Senate and the House. We've got 2 seats there we could pick up. Slotkin is now running for the Senate, a tight race with Rogers, but you also have Kildee had retired. So you got Paul Young, you got Tom Barrett. I believe Republicans in the House could pick up 2 more seats in Michigan.
I want to close with 2 more questions, Mr. Speaker. Mike Lawler is one of my favorite guys. He was with you in your corner. He's a fighter. What do you think about Mike Lawler?
Mike Lawler is going to win. He's going to define all odds. This is the guy who represents his district. Remember, Mike Lawler beat the DCCC chair, something that has not happened in 46 years. His constituency makes up of Soros and the Clintons. This is a guy who is a statement, who works on both sides. He even got, here he is, that you had Biden early in his presidential is going to go to take on Lawler in his district. He walks in, he says, this Lawler guy works so dang hard. He's not one of the crazies. He gets praises on both sides of the aisle because that's just how good he is. They have thrown all the money they can at him. Lawler is going to win that race, and Lawler, I think, has a very bright future.
Last question. You and I have been I'm not in California anymore. You live there. The Los Angeles Times would not endorse Kamala Harris. The Los Angeles Times would not endorse Kamala Harris. How surprised were you when that happened?
It was unbelievable surprising, but you know what? It continued on. The Washington Post, in Minnesota as well. A non-endorsement of Harris from a newspaper like that is an endorsement of Trump. That just shows this race how close it is, that these papers can even see that they can't even endorse Harris, her home state. She lives in Southern California. That was probably the biggest slap in the face of anything to tell you. And I leave the voters with this. She has spent more than $1 billion. And I don't say this facetiously, I'm serious. Name me the 3 things that she says she'll do if she wins. I can't name them. I don't know what they are. She doesn't know the direction of where she would even go.
You are so right. Kevin McCarthy, always pleasure to see you, speak with you. And Mr. Speaker, thank you for joining me on election eve. I know you're close to the president. I know that he takes your advice, and I'm glad about that, because no better hand in American politics and understanding the American people than Kevin McCarthy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.